In the spring of 1922, in the quiet countryside of Bavaria, Germany, an isolated farm became the setting for one of the most disturbing unsolved murder cases in European history. The farm was called Hinterkaifeck. It sat alone, surrounded by woods and fields nearly a kilometer from the nearest village. To outsiders, it appeared ordinary, a modest homestead occupied by 3 generations of the same family. But in the days leading up to the murders, something deeply unsettling began to happen. The owner of the farm, 63-year-old Andreas Gruber, told neighbors that he had discovered footprints in the snow leading from the forest toward his house. What troubled him most was that there were no footprints leading back. Soon after, he reported hearing footsteps in the attic during the night. A set of house keys went missing, and a local maid, unnerved by what she described as strange noises and an oppressive atmosphere, quit her job, claiming the property was haunted. On March 31st, 1922, a new maid arrived to begin work at Hinterkaifeck. Within hours, she would become one of 6 victims. Living on the farm were Andreas Gruber, his wife Cecilia, their widowed daughter Victoria Gabriel, Victoria's 2 children, 7-year-old Cecilia and 2-year-old Joseph, and the new maid, Maria Baumgartner. What happened that evening remains unknown. Investigators believe that sometime after nightfall, members of the family were lured one by one from the house to the barn. There in the darkness, someone waited. The killer used a mattock, a farming tool with a heavy iron head, striking each victim with devastating force. Andreas Gruber was killed first, then his wife, then Victoria. Finally, young Cecilia. The child did not die immediately. When her body was later examined, investigators found clumps of her own hair in her hands, suggesting she remained alive for hours after the attack, tearing at her hair in pain and fear. Inside the house, the murders continued. 2-year-old Joseph was killed in his crib. Maria Baumgartner was murdered in her bedroom, likely before she had any understanding of what was happening around her. By the morning of April 1st, everyone at Hinterkaifeck was dead, and yet the killer did not leave. This is one of the most chilling aspects of the case. Evidence showed that someone remained on the farm for several days after the murders. Neighbors noticed smoke rising from the chimney, indicating the fireplace had been used, the cattle were fed, fresh bread was cut in the kitchen. Family dog had been cared for. Whoever committed the murders appeared calm enough to continue the routines of daily life while living among 6 bodies. On April 4th, concerned neighbors and a mechanic arrived at the farm after the family failed to appear in public and young Cecilia had missed school. Inside the barn, they made the horrifying discovery. The 4 bodies were stacked beneath hay. Soon after, the bodies of Maria and Joseph were found inside the house. The investigation began immediately and quickly, became one of the largest criminal inquiries in Germany at the time. More than 100 suspects were questioned over the years. Attention first turned to Andreas Gruber himself, whose reputation in the community was deeply troubling. Years earlier, he and his daughter Victoria had been convicted of incest, a scandal that fueled rumors surrounding the paternity of young Joseph. Several men with personal connections to Victoria were investigated. Her late husband had died in World War I, but some believed he might have survived and returned. Another suspect was a neighbor who allegedly had disputes with the family over property and finances. Yet despite interviews, confessions, and countless theories, no evidence was strong enough to lead to a conviction. In a controversial decision, the bodies were decapitated during the investigation so that clairvoyants could examine the skulls for supernatural clues. The practice produced nothing useful, and the victims' heads were later lost during World War II. As decades passed, the mystery only deepened. Investigators revisited the case multiple times throughout the 20th century. In 2007, students at a police academy in Germany conducted a modern review of the evidence and concluded they believed they had identified a likely suspect. But due to legal and privacy restrictions, the name was never released publicly. More than a century has passed since the murders at Hinterkaifeck. The farmhouse itself was demolished in 1923, and little remains of the isolated property where 6 lives ended in brutal silence. No one was ever convicted. No definitive explanation has ever been given for the footprints in the snow, the noises in the attic, or the unsettling possibility that the killer may have been hiding on the farm before the murders even began. The Hinterkaifeck Murders endure as one of the most haunting unsolved crimes in history, not only because of the violence, but because somewhere in the darkness of that lonely Bavarian farm, someone watched, waited, and vanished without a trace.